the Talk, episode 245, featuring Armando Quintana. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself, I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Armando Quintana. Armando, are you ready to talk?
I'm excited.
An 800-mile pilgrimage, modeling medical school acceptances, viral articles, and all of the countless efforts in between, Armando Quintana continuously self-reflects not on these accomplishments, but on his failures. Did I feel big today? Did I go against the grain? Armando Quintana, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So your talk is called Treat Every Conversation Like a First Date. I love it because you really model. What does it look like? Everybody's talking about being present and being in the moment and treating people with empathy and all of that. You have a beautiful anecdote. Yeah, an anecdote in your talk about your barista who you were the first person to call her by her first name after 7 hours on her feet. I just thought that was a beautiful way to start the talk. Take us behind the talk. Treat every conversation like a first date.
I appreciate it. And yeah, so that was my first TEDx talk. That was the TEDx Youth talk. I've given 3 so far, and it culminates with my 4th one in the grand finale in October with another. And so for this one, to be specific, I always thought that most people are very uncomfortable with a deeper conversation nowadays. And I think we can all relate to maybe having gone to Starbucks or a coffee shop, going to the story that I said. And so I started realizing that there are a few different things you can do to treat every conversation like a first date. And the first one is, I think oftentimes people, when they meet you or they see you, they say, "Hey, how are you?" And to that, usually you reply, "Oh, I'm good." And then you say, "How are you?" And then you say, "Oh, I'm good." And then you part ways. And so for me, I started realizing as a scientist too, that there is a science behind this, and that you could say, instead of saying, "What's up? How's it going? How's your day?" to say, "What has been the best part about your day?" And most times when you ask this to someone, they'll look back and they'll say, what has been the best part about my day? And even if it's 8 a.m. and I just woke up, I can guarantee you there will be something, whether it be the aroma of the breakfast or anything along those lines, that's going to be amazing. The second part about that talk was to just avoid small talk and to really, really dig deep. People are uncomfortable with it, but for some reason they're uncomfortable, but yet they crave it, even though they don't say it. And then my last point was, anytime I have a conversation with someone who I know I'm going to see again, I record everything on my iPhone. So I go on my iPhone afterward, and then say we have a talk, and I'll say August 29th, 2018, has 3 kids. These are their names. These are their ages. This is his favorite food. This is what he despises. So make sure that you don't talk about this. And so people always think I have a great memory, but in reality, I'm just very strategic about it.
That's amazing. Armando, would you happen to be an introvert by any chance?
The older I get, the more introverted I do become when I'm alone, yes.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because the biggest fear of the introvert is small talk. And you, sir, have just found a way that all introverts who are listening to Be the Talk, including myself, because I'm kind of on the line. You wouldn't imagine that, but most of the time I'm a little bit over the line in introversion, and we hate small talk. But you've just put a fascinating take on it, because we can be gathering data, we can be getting to know people, we can be sidestepping the meaninglessness of the small talk by asking intelligent, targeted questions that really make people feel valued and cared for, which is really what we need in our world these days. So, I think that's absolutely huge. But here's the fascinating thing. We only have a few minutes, but I mean, you've got all of these other facets to your life. You've got another 3 talks that you've given. So I'd love to kind of broaden a few more dimensions that we have. So I barely even know how to ask the question, but just take us behind the curtain, Armando, in your life. I'm seeing stuff about being a scientist, being being accepted into medical school, 3 other talks. So, the floor is yours.
Mm-hmm. So the way I'm culminating a final speech in October at a TEDx Cal State Long Beach over here in California. And it's, I'm not sure what the topic's going to be yet, but I know that it's going to be along the lines of treat your life like a big experiment. Because I think oftentimes when you're younger, and this kind of went into my second talk of a blind man's vision, is your life is crafted for you. Your parents or your relatives kind of tell you what you should do. Most people, at least where I grew up, about being an attorney, about a doctor, about all these traditional careers, but you don't know about making a good living, for example, just doing podcasts or blogging or working a tomato farm, something so random, but something that could really be so financially lucrative. And so I got into med schools. Yes, that is another part. And I decided not to go. Mm-hmm. That was one of the hardest decisions because I took my MCAT, applied. All I had to do was sign the dotted line, and I didn't do it. But I've been able to treat my life like a big experiment, and I just turned 26. So it's exciting to see everything of where I thought I would be when I was even 23 is nowhere near where I am now. And I think that's just because of the fact that I like to be uncomfortable. And so if I'm uncomfortable and I can observe what's going on, that usually leads to me making a decently rational decision. So that's a little bit about that.
Well, that's awesome. So congratulations to you for not going into medical school if that's not what you truly wanted to do, because I can tell you, I've got medical people in my family, Armando, and that is a big commitment on many, many levels. And there's a lot of challenges there. So what is in your future at this point? If not medical school, what is in the cards for you?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. What I always tell people is, I think when people ask what's the future hold or what do you want to do, I always say I can tell you what I don't want to do. And there's been so many things that I've enjoyed and that I've loved. And right now, for example, I'm able to help run a digital marketing company. Mm-hmm. I'm able to be a copywriter, and I'm able to do these things. And I'm realizing that within the last 3 years of treating my life this way, what I've loved has stuck. And what I haven't really loved has just kind of floated away. So every year I'll start 5 new things. And out of those 5 things, I pretty much know that 4 of those things I'm going to give up on. There's going to be one thing that I'm just going to be so in love with that is going to eventually be ingrained and be part of who I am.
Armando, I've got to hear something about this 800-mile journey that I read in your bio. So please take us behind that.
Of course. So back in 2014, when I graduated college, I went on a pilgrimage called the Way of St. James. And so you start on the coast of the tip of France, and you walk all across Spain until you reach the end in a town called Finisterre. And so back then, it used to be known as the end of the world, which is what it would translate to. And so it was probably about 20 to 25 miles a day. And thankfully, I did not get any bed bugs in the hostels. I didn't suffer anything that I could have really suffered, because a lot of people got infections, some sort of disease, whatever it may be. But it was fun. It was enjoyable. And then it was my own sense of personal discovery. So I think once every maybe 5 to 10 years, that'll be good. Was
this a solo trip, or was it communal, or what? I have not heard of that particular pilgrimage before. It sounds fascinating.
Yes, it was a communal trip.
Okay.
About 20 of us.
Okay. So did other people get the bed bugs? Did I hear that correctly? Or?
Yeah, some people got bed bugs. Okay. Other people got infections in their joints or inflammation, sprained an ankle. But thankfully I didn't. So I'm appreciative of that. Well, hey, what a way to live life. Pretty wild and free, and going after the things that you truly want. We've been enjoying this talk with Armando Quintana. One of his talks is called Treat Every Conversation Like a First Date. If Armando gives me additional talks, I will provide the links to all those talks in the show notes, and I'll tell you that in just a moment. But right now, it is actually time in just a moment for the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast?
It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Armando Quintana. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Armando a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Armando, are you ready?
Ready.
So, and you can answer because you've been accepted for 4, you've given 3, you've got the 4th up, so you can answer just collectively with all the experience that you have. Were you invited, or did you apply, or both for some of these?
I apply.
Okay, for all 4.
Correct.
All right. Are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
Blender.
How does that work for you?
It works okay. My last speech, I lost track of where I was, and I skipped 3 minutes. And so when I look back at the PowerPoint, I realized at that moment, oh my word, I just skipped 3 minutes. But thankfully, the people who really knew my talk, they told me, whether they were just trying to help me and cushion the ego, it didn't seem like it was a mistake, but it was a mistake for me.
You know, I hear that a lot. I hear that exact thing a lot, that, hey, I missed a whole big chunk of my talk, and you know what? People couldn't even tell. I kept going, and it made for a shorter talk. And that's kind of the best practice, is just keep on going. If you miss something, keep on going, because it seems to have a way of filling in the blanks, and a shorter talk is often a better talk. So, Armando, what's a tip, tool, or technique that has helped you?
It's a good question, by the way. It's a good question. Every time I speak, whether it be to 5 people or it be to 1,000 people, I go up. And I just look in the audience. I'll just look around. I'll look to everyone. And about 3 to 4 seconds later is when I'll start speaking. And that's been the best tool to really relax me when I get up there.
So is it a relaxation thing only, or does it center you, or does it make you more present? Does it acknowledge the audience?
It allows me to be more present and say, all right, let's get to work. 1, 2, 3, let's go.
I like it. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Armando, have you been an opener? Have you been a closer, or in between?
I've been an opener. I have not closed one yet.
Okay. What's your advice for openers? That's not an easy spot to be in.
It's make sure your audience is awake. And even if you've memorized your talk, I always say, be prepared to improvise, just in case people aren't jiving with your talk as you thought they would.
Here's the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of any of your talks that you had to cut out?
Well, the part that I forgot. Because in my mind at that moment, I was thinking, should I go back? Should I do it? Or should I just keep going forward? And then I had to make that split-second decision and just keep rolling with the fun.
Keep rolling. Yeah, that was the right decision. Armando, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during any of your talks, or before any of your talks?
It's a good question. That's a good question. And I would say the first talk I gave, the mic that I had, it started falling off about 3 minutes into the talk. So I had to just think, okay, how are we going to fix it? But thankfully, it just been a little bit of tape that fell off, so I put it back on, and then my blood pressure decreased, and it went from 180 to a good old 120. Okay.
Well, and it's funny, Talk Universe, little things like wearing a little ear mic or any of these little things become enormous things. So that's why we talk about these things in the Blitz Round. Armando Quintana is, we're talking with him. He's given 3 talks at this point, soon to give a 4th. We've been talking about his talk, Treat Every Conversation Like a First Date. Go to bethetalk.com if you want to watch any of his talks. We'll have a link to all of them on there, as well as we will have a link to his LinkedIn profile so that you can connect not just with his talk, but to Armando. And in a minute, we're just going to come right back to Armando for the final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with Armando Quintana. It is time for the final word of advice.
The best advice I ever got was to not take advice from anyone you wouldn't trade places with. And so when I was talking about my speech, I only talked to people who I said, this is someone who I admire and who I wish to be like as a speaker in the future. And that's the best advice I could give.
Good advice. Armando Quintana, thank you so much for carving out time to be on the talk today and share your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.